So now, let's frame the presentation. The good stuff is seated to my right, and that's going to be the experiences and accounts you're going to hear from our nonprofit leaders regarding how they got started, and once they got started, how to make a success of the organization they have. But I've been asked to give a very brief legal introduction to the not-for-profit incorporation and tax exemption process. Talking 10 minutes here, folks. For those of you who've seen The Matrix, it's going to be the way that Neo learns Kung Fu in The Matrix. You're going to be plugged into The Matrix, and then after 10 minutes, you're going to know not-for-profit incorporation and tax exemption. But if you don't, I'm going to provide you with additional resources that are more expansive and access to many different documents and presentations that you can get to find out more about the legal process. So let's get started on the PowerPoint. The obligatory legal disclaimer the presentation I'm about to give you is not legal advice. It is legal information. If you get started on an actual legal project or have one, you're well advised to get an attorney and accountant and other business professionals on board to guide you in the right way and ensure that you don't create some kind of Frankenstein's monster, and instead do something that's really terrific that will benefit your founders and the community. A quick roadmap to the presentation. This is an introduction to incorporation and tax exemption, albeit a very short one. For a more detailed introduction, you can go to the Foundation Center website for a webinar called Essentials of Starting a Nonprofit Organization that I gave, and that's recorded. And there's a webinar and documents that you can download as well. It's about an hour long. You'll get a more substantive introduction to the topic. While you're at it, check it out. It's a 5-part series. It also introduces you to marketing, to strategic planning, to fundraising. It really gives you the tools you need to get started and to think properly so that you can create a plan that's likely to result in the fruition of a successful nonprofit organization. And finally, after we do that, we're going to turn to our panel. And before we get started, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to speak individually, say who you are, and talk a little bit about where you come from. Now, this may be the single most important slide that I go through, and indeed, I could go through this slide and say, that's it, let's move on to the panel. Are you ready to get started? You think. I like to say that the first thing I do when someone comes to me and says that they want to start a nonprofit is slap them in the face in order to wake them up, not figuratively speaking, of course, to wake them up. You need to have a plan. You need to be well advised. You need to think through essential matters first. So what are the essential matters? Number one, if you want to be a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, do you actually have a mission that will qualify as charitable and will get the Internal Revenue Service to recognize your organization as 501c3? Sometimes it's fairly straightforward, sometimes it's not. A school can be for-profit, a school can be not-for-profit. Certainly an arts organization can be for-profit or not-for-profit. And we know that most dojos and meditation centers are not 501c3. So you think about what you're doing, but also how you're carrying it out. It requires a little tax research, and consultation with an expert is highly advised. You must have a detailed plan. That means you must be able to describe the activities in furtherance of your mission. And you need to describe them by saying what they are, who's going to carry them out, where they'll be carried out, how they will be funded, what are the qualifications of the leaders who are carrying out those activities. That's really the heart and soul of the Form 1023. The Form 1023, provided on the IRS website, irs.gov, is the application for recognition of your organization as a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. You need a budget. Take a look at Part 9 of the Form 1023. You'll need at least 3 years, possibly up to 5 years of financial data. That shouldn't be too daunting. It's basic stuff. It's income, it's expenses, so an income statement. And it's also a balance sheet, a statement of your revenues, your assets and your liabilities. If you don't have any, it's fine to say that. And if you have to make numbers up because you haven't been there yet, it's fine to say that also, provided that there's a rational and reasonable relationship between the numbers that you put in the financial projections and the activities that you describe in Part 4 of the application. Finally, and this is absolutely critical, a core group that's prepared to do the work that's required to get you to incorporation and tax exemption. People speak to me and say, can you get this done for me in 2 weeks, in a month, in 2 months? Absolutely not. There's a ton of work involved for the attorney, but for the group that's getting started. There are committees that have to be formed. There's research that has to be done. And unless you have a group that has some experience, that has some competence to carry out the activities that you plan to engage in, you're not going to be successful. You can't do it on your own. Even if you are terrific and charismatic and have a great idea, you're going to need a core group behind you to bring your mission to fruition.